Hey guys, what's going on? This is Lucas and welcome to my channel, and if you're a subscriber, welcome back. I just finished Survive the Night by Riley Sager, and by the time I finished it, I really wish I hadn't. Alright, getting this straight out of the way, right off the bat. I do not like this book. I'm going to be spoiling the entire book, so if you feel like you want to read this, this is not the video for you. Go read this book if you want to read a thriller, I guess, but I'm going to be spoiling the entirety of the book. So, here is why I don't like this book. Okay, first of all, background. This book takes place in November of 1991. It stars two characters, Charlie Jordan and Josh Baxter. These two college students who are doing a ride share back to Ohio from their college, Oliphant University. And so the guy that Charlie's with, Josh, is thought to be a serial killer because he's a stranger and he acts weird, and he acts progressively weird as the story goes on. And so that's where the story takes place. It takes place over the course of one night, and it takes place in mostly Josh's car as they go through various tense situations. And that's where it starts off. I was really excited about this book at the beginning going into it, because I have never read Riley Sager before. I didn't even know it was a dude, honestly. I associate the name Riley with a girl, even though I know it's a gender-neutral name. I think that has to do with Inside Out, though I'm not sure. Because wasn't the main character named Riley in Inside Out? Yeah, it doesn't matter. But the point is, yeah, I've never read him, and this is my first book, and apparently this is the worst one to start with. It doesn't have that high of a rating on Goodreads, but I think it's still higher than it should be. Alright, but first things first, let's get the good things I want to say for the book out of the way first, and then we can dive into the weeds of all the terrible stuff, all the terrible shit. So, I really like the writing style. It's very approachable. The prose is written well enough that you can follow it easily, you don't get confused, and you can devour this book over the course of just a few days, a weekend. It took me just a few days to finish it, and yeah, so I can say that the writing style is really good, it's really punchy, it's really fast-paced, it allows you to, go through the book pretty quickly. And by God, that did help towards the end of this book, being able to just read through quickly and not have to pay attention to shit. Another thing about the book that I like is that they always follow through with their Chekhov's gun scenarios. Like, there's a case where Josh has handcuffs, and Charlie gets a hold of Josh's handcuffs, and she puts them in her front pocket. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, okay, she has those in her inventory now, essentially. And so I'm just sitting there waiting for her to follow up with that and to use them. And she does, lo and behold, at the end. Her boyfriend at the beginning, Robbie, he ends up being the serial killer. The campus killer that killed 3 women, including the main character's friend, Maddie. And I guessed this right off the bat. I don't know exactly how, but it probably has something to do with the fact that there's very few moving parts, there's very few side characters. So I think that I just latched onto Robbie because it'd be too obvious to make Josh the killer. It would be far too obvious. And even though all the signs were, as you were reading through the story, all the signs hint at Josh being the killer, I'm like, no, it's gonna be Robbie. It's gonna be Robbie, watch. Now Robbie's tailing Josh, so Robbie's obviously going to be the killer. Watch. And sure enough, that happened. They did throw some curveballs with the diner. This diner is run by Marge, a grandmother of Maddie, who was Charlie's best friend who got murdered by a stranger. Marge, being very, very struck by Maddie's sudden death and recent death, goes on this sort of revenge plot. Because Charlie saw the killer on the night Maddie was killed. She blames herself for it, she's wrecked with guilt. And so she's the only one who saw the killer. And a big part of this book, and a major plot point, is the fact that Charlie Jordan is a cinephile. And she loves movies, and she even has a psychological condition that pastes movies over her reality. Kind of like an agnosia or something like that. So that gets her into a lot of trouble, like I said in my previous TBR, I liked the idea of an unreliable narrator, and I liked the idea of not knowing what to trust or who to trust. But this book doesn't go in a good way with that concept. They're constantly solving whatever problems Charlie has mentally before you even have time to guess what's going to happen next. It seems to be just like something that was just put in the book to be thematic to the book's overall narrative, and also just to build suspense for like 3 pages at a time. Because there's a situation where Charlie sees something in the bathroom and it's not real, so she's going to trust someone else. Okay, so she sees something else. Okay, and then that movie's gone. Okay, then she sees something else. Okay, then that movie's gone. And then once reality sort of fades in again, you kind of just come back to the same conclusions. Or she does, rather. And can I just say, she is the dumbest main character I think I've ever seen, or at least one of them. Okay, she gets all these red flags of Josh at the beginning from the rideshare, and she gets all these red flags that he's lying to her, and when she has one of these mental breakdowns and she has one of the movies in her head, she's thinking, okay, well, I'm going to trust this guy who's been lying to me, and I'm going to trust this guy who kidnapped me, and I'm going to trust this guy who was paid $10,000 to take me to this diner. So that just seemed very unbelievable to me. So I didn't like that as much. And after Robbie is revealed to be the killer, Charlie kills Robbie, and then at the end of the book, Charlie ends up marrying Josh. She marries her kidnapper. Even after knowing that he was paid 10 grand to leave her off at a diner for dead and had no idea what Marge wanted with her. Even after lying to Charlie, using a fake ID, gaslighting her, and kidnapping her, she still ends up with him at the end of the book. That in itself makes me hate this book, but it gets worse, because you go through this whole story, present tense, I love it, unreliable narrator, really good, and you get suspenseful moments, Marge wants revenge, she's improperly taking it out on Charlie because she feels like Charlie has insider information so that Marge can get an idea who the killer is, but all this stuff, all that's explained, all this set dressing and stuff, is found out to be unreliable in a meta sense because at the end of the book, it's found out that the entire narrative of the book was an embellished movie. So you're left wondering what the hell happened and what the hell can I actually believe. I swear, I was fuming by the last few pages. I was willing to give this book about a 2.5 stars out of 5 up until the last few pages, because pulling that whole this is just a movie thing really ticked me off. It pissed me the hell off, because that is kind of a cop-out in many different ways. It's a cop-out for the writer because the writer can make any excuse he wants pretty much for the story and be like, oh, well, the main character is dumb as rocks because it's a movie, or the main character did this because it's a movie, or this area looks like this because it's a movie. It just seems like it's a blanket excuse. Also, it's one of those endings that kind of phones it in. It's kind of like that whole meme where it's like, and then Harry Potter woke up underneath the stairs in his room. That sort of thing. So you're just left wondering why you wasted so much of your time reading this book just for 3 pages of the actual canon of the story. So I really didn't like that. In the 3 pages, you just find out, yes, Robbie was the killer. Yes, Charlie had a friend named Maddie who died. Yes, Charlie was the one who ended up bringing Robbie to justice and killing him. And Josh was real. And Charlie ended up marrying Josh. But in the last few pages, Charlie says that the director took some embellishments with the movie. So the last scene, especially, didn't even happen. The last scene that's really suspenseful in this book didn't even happen. It's completely wiped from the map. And that just took away a lot of the experience for me because I was really invested into it. It had a ton of cliches, so it worked as a movie in a book about movies. I don't know where I was going with that. But the cliches worked like that. So I was buying into it, and I was just reading it like, oh, that's entertaining. You know, it doesn't have to be believable as long as it's entertaining, right? But when they just retconned that and said it was a movie, I just was left wondering why I wasted my time. And I don't know what writer or what reader or what young person needs to hear this, but we do not marry our kidnappers. That's like rule number 1. And also, lastly, before I wrap up this really rambly, disconnected review of this book, is that there is a redemption for Marge's character in the movie, but there's no redemption for Marge's character in the real world of the book. Because in the last few pages, it said that Marge dies in the final act. Okay, the final scene of the book, Marge dies. Whereas in the movie, Marge survives. She's in the hospital in critical condition, and Charlie visits her in the hospital and gives her the tooth of Robbie, the killer. Because one of Robbie's calling cards, and one of the things that you can identify his killings by, is a tooth, a singular tooth that he takes from all of his victims. And so Maddie had her tooth stolen, obviously, after she died and her body was discarded. And so Robbie had that on his person. And so Charlie felt like giving back by giving Robbie's tooth to Marge after she had vanquished him. And I thought that was actually pretty cool and pretty neat and pretty Hollywood. But after I found out it didn't happen, I felt really robbed. So overall, that's the experience I can just say about this book, is that it left me feeling robbed in many different ways. And I would not suggest this for anybody, much less a person who's interested in thrillers or interested in, character development, characters that make sense, characters that make rational decisions, or a thought-provoking piece, because this is not a thought-provoking piece by any means. I, with the utmost confidence, give this book a 1 star out of 5 stars. And one final note I want to make is that the whole book, from start to finish, was indicated to be a movie. And so, let me review this as a movie. As a movie, it's shit. Alright, as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you did. This is Lucas, and I'll catch you later.